Funding for this program is provided by Bruce Foods Corporation, makers of the complete line of Cajun King seafood seasoning mixes and other distinctive Louisiana-style food products.
Louisiana. Hello, I'm Chef John Folse, welcoming you to this great state of ours. We're real proud of our people, places, and food, and I'd like for you to know a little bit more about it. So join me and some of my friends as we visit the historical food towns of this state and cook up another great Taste of Louisiana. Welcome everybody to a Taste of Louisiana. I'm Chef John Folse, and if you like hunting or fishing, today is a day to visit with us in the kitchen. We're going to the southwest corner of the state of Louisiana to the parish of Cameron, where there's many wildlife refuges in Holly Beach, Louisiana, the Cajun Riviera. Fact is, that's what we're looking at right now, the beaches around Holly Beach, right in Cameron Parish. Here's some little turns taking I guess a little playful day in the wake at Holly Beach. This is about a 10-mile stretch, and even though there's only about 100 permanent residents that live at Holly Beach, Louisiana, there's about 525 camps that are built right there on the shore where hunters and fishermen, and of course people who love food, come to visit that little southwest corner. Here we have some guys, doing what they do best, playing with crabs. You know, you can always tell the male from the female crab because the female crab always has her fingernails painted red. See all those red little fingers? That's the female. You don't even have to turn it over to know it. Oyster shucking. Oysters are a very big industry in southwest Louisiana, and even though a lot of them are shipped out, nothing is better than good fresh oysters right off of the shell. Boy, doesn't that look great, huh? Come on, it looks great. Sure it does. This gentleman here is Robicheaux, one of the great shell artists who live and work right there at Holly Beach. He goes out and collects shells right off of the shore to make these wonderful little animals like this little, this must be a marsh hen, a little red-headed woodpecker, and of course a duck, and that's a little piece of driftwood. Here we are crossing the Calcasieu Ship Channel, and this is right at the Gulf of Mexico. This is a ferry that brings people from Holly Beach on over to Cameron, and you can imagine what these birds are doing. That's right, they're having a wonderful, wonderful picnic. They're picking up all of those great shrimp. This is white pelican. The state bird of Louisiana is the brown pelican, and these are the white pelicans. The jetties protect the coastline of Louisiana as the big oil tankers, as you see here. Look at the size of that vessel. Imagine the wake, and those jetties are going to keep that water from eroding the shoreline. And again, look at all of these gulls, and they're picking up crabs and shrimp and all kind of little animals that those props are kicking up. I mentioned that there's about 4 wildlife refuges in Louisiana. This is for protection of all of our great wildlife. Look at this little roseate spoonbill. It almost looks like a flamingo, but it's a wonderful bird in Louisiana. This is the I guess this is the little egret here. Beautiful little birds. You can see them all over the roadsides of Louisiana. Every little highway will have about 100 of these little babies walking around. Poodoo. I used to love to hunt these as a young boy, and they're great eating. Some people call them coots, I think. And this is ibises coming in for a landing. I said we have 4 refuges: Sabine, Cameron, Lacassine, and then, of course, our state wildlife refuge, Rockefeller. There's a lot of protection of wild game and seafood in Louisiana, and that's just an example of what happens when you protect your seafood and wildlife. There's an abundance of it right here on the shoreline of Louisiana. What a great day we spent down on the coastline at Holly Beach. It was fantastic, those beautiful camps. We had a great night there, and one of my guests who's going to be here today, Captain Sammie Faulk, took good care of me that night, made me a good crab stew. He is one of the hunting and fishing guides of Louisiana, and he's going to be here to tell us just a little bit about what he does, and I think you're going to find him very interesting. Captain Sammie Faulk, a good friend of mine. What am I going to cook for you today? Well, I want you to look at this bowl. You know, does this excite you or what? It sure excites me. This is redfish. You can always tell redfish by the little dot on the tail back here. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's right here at the end of the tail, a little bitty dot that always tells the redfish. These fish are now being conserved in Louisiana. We used to use so much of these in the restaurants. Now there's a limit on what you can take in, none in commercial fishing. But we're going to make a courtbouillion today. And a courtbouillion is a fish stew, and it originated in on the, I guess, European coastlines of the Mediterranean, where you would take a lot of different kind of fish and shellfish and cook it in a nice light broth, and then serve the broth as well as the meat to create a wonderful fish soup. But here in South Louisiana, we have to just add a little bit more ingredients, a little bit dark brown roux to thicken it, and then, of course, we have a fish stew that is not too much different from the soup of the Mediterranean. Again, if we look into the bowl, I'll tell you a little bit about the ingredients that we're going to use. I've got, of course, the redfish itself. I've actually taken one already and filleted it, and I've made a wonderful fish stock with the bones of the redfish. I've got onions. I've got all different colored bell peppers, and, of course, celery, the things that always go into the foods of Louisiana. Tomatoes, because this is a Creole dish out of the city of New Orleans originally, and of course some of the fish meat itself, and poached fish up at the top here, because in a courtbouillion you always want to add the poached fish right at the end. So I'm going to start off by firing up my old black iron pot, and what I have in here is a nice dark brown Cajun Roux. Now, I've made the roux already a little bit ahead of time because it takes about 10 or 15 minutes with equal parts of oil and flour, slowly browned until you have just a really nice nutty aroma coming out of the pot. You don't want to scorch this roux, because if you do, you'll have to pitch it out and start all over again. A roux is not only used for thickening, it's used for color and for flavor in Louisiana cooking, and that's the main difference between the classical courtbouillion and the courtbouillion of Louisiana. We put in the dark brown roux. Once we have it nice and brown, and of course you can bring it to different degrees of darkness. I like mine about the color of peanuts or caramel color. And then into the pot, I would go ahead and start to add my seasonings. Now, you know how important measurements are in my pots. I always like to just throw in a couple hands of this, couple hands of that. In fact, this has the bell pepper. Here's the wonderful celery, and you notice that I'm not too careful about the size of the seasonings here. I like to cut them all different sizes, because as the seasonings begin to cook, what happens is the ones that's cut very, very small will cook quickly and start to caramelize in the pot. The ones that's a little bit bigger will take longer to cook, and as the stew cooks or as the soup cooks, it starts to add flavor a little at a time out of those bigger pieces of seasoning. So I would saute my onions, celery, bell pepper for about 5-6 minutes or so in the dark brown roux, and then I would add my favorite spice of all in Louisiana, a little bit garlic. You know how I love this. In fact, I even eat garlic on my desserts. I'm going to throw a little bit of that in, a couple spoonsful. And after all, garlic did originate in a lot of the cooking of the Mediterranean around Provence and France, so it makes sense to put a lot of garlic into the courtbouillion pot of South Louisiana. Into this, I'm going to add some fresh fish. Now, I've taken a fillet of fish and I've chopped it up, and I've chopped it real small because I want the fish fillets to cook into the roux and actually cook apart. I want all of these little pieces of fish to cook into the roux with the vegetables and start to flavor the roux, giving it that good seafood flavor. Next, I'll add some nice fresh tomatoes. And tomatoes, again, comes from that Creole influence in the dish. Naturally, we have to have the tomatoes. And in addition to fresh tomatoes, I'm going to also add a little bit tomato sauce. And this is going to give the courtbouillion the nice rust color that you always expect when you have a courtbouillion. And then a little tomatoes. The fact is, this is almost like a cayenne pepper, and this is a very spicy tomato sauce. So I'm going to put it in here with a little tomato juice, and I'll stir that around. And look how all these ingredients start to come together in this black iron pot. You can smell all of the great flavors. At least I can. I wish you could. I'll stir that into the roux, and now I'll add my really nice flavoring device, and this is a fish stock. I told you I took the bones of the redfish, and I boil those bones with a little bit of celery, a little bit bell pepper, a little bit onions, of course some bay leaves are always good in stock, some peppercorns. But what I have here, instead of putting water into this courtbouillion, I'm putting a very rich fish stock. And imagine the amount of flavor that's coming out of this stock pot rather than just plain water. And of course, just ask your seafood supplier, if you go to the seafood market, ask him to give you a couple nice, a pound of bones or so, because after all, they're going to throw them away anyway. Or if you're a fisherman, save those bones, and when you get a couple pounds, make a nice fish stock and freeze it. Put it in the freezer in little bags, and you're going to always have a nice, good, rich fish stock. Now you can see just how nice this is coming together here. I'm going to just change spoons and stir this. This is somewhere between a soup and a stew, so you don't want it to be too thick, but yet you don't want it to be too light. So at this point, I'll add a few little green onions, nice handful of green onions, right down into that. And then, of course, I'm going to add some bay leaves, because I want some of those. And I'll even put some fresh herbs. I'm going to put some basil and a little bit fresh dill that I was able to get. Of course, put whatever herbs you would like right down into that pot. And I'm going to squeeze a little bit lemon juice. And I want you to look at my wonderful old lemon squeezer here. This is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 100 years old, and the lemon goes in, the little plunger here, and I'll squeeze the lemon juice right down into the pot. Well, it gives it a great lemony flavor. Now I'll allow this courtbouillion to cook on a real low fire for about 30 minutes, and then I'm going to come back and add the fish to it. And the cooked fish has already been poached off, and it won't take but just a minute to finish this soup. So I'll turn that fire real, real low, because I don't want it to scorch, and it's important to cook it on a real low heat. And just let that courtbouillion cook for about 30 minutes. It'll be great. Okay, I'll move this out of the way. And then I'm going to do my second dish for you, a dish that I discovered in Holly Beach. I had never heard of this dish before, but I saw it. I was kind of stunned and tasted it. It was magnificent. And the dish is deep-fried hard-shell crab. I want you to take a look at this. Now, what we've done, we've taken the crab and cleaned them. Of course, we've taken the hard shell off of the top, but we've allowed the claw to stay on because we want to make sure that all that great meat that's in the claw of the crab is on the plate. We want you to be able to bite into that and get all of that great crab meat out. This is the blue crab, the same one you saw a couple minutes ago. And what I'm going to do now is make a little batter. So I've got a bowl with a couple of eggs in it, and I'll stir that around. This is going to be a beer batter. I'm going to put into the eggs a little bit Creole mustard. And of course, you can use any kind of mustard or flavorings that you would use in your own area. Don't worry about whether it's a particular type of flavor, whatever you would like. Any type of spice goes really nicely in this. A little bit milk or cream would be best. Of course, you can use skim milk. And then, what'd you say about another, half a bowl of beer, huh? You have to have beer when you eat boiled crabs or deep-fried crabs, so why not make the batter with a little bit of beer? Of course, you can add water in the place of the beer. Don't worry about it. Okay, now I'll take my batter, my breading. Actually, what I've done here in this little bowl is to take breadcrumbs, yellow corn flour, and just white flour, and I'll put it all together and season it with a little salt and pepper. And I'll take a few of these crabs, put them into the beer batter, and then into the flour. And what you want to do is make sure that the crabs are totally coated. And I know a lot of guys in Louisiana who are looking at this right now and saying, I've never deep-fried hard-shell crabs in my life. Well, I tell you what, try it one time, guys. You're going to love this dish. It really is a great, great dish. I'll deep-fry them now in a little bit oil, and of course you can use vegetable oil. You can use any oil that you would like. I'm using a vegetable oil here. Peanut oil is wonderful for deep frying. And I'll put a couple of them down into the oil. This is about 375 degrees, and you would allow this to cook only for a couple of minutes because the crabs don't take any time to cook. So you want to cook them just until the crabs start to float up to the top, and then you'll know that they're cooked. Now, I got to get some of this batter off of my hands here. So the crabs, as I say, will cook in that oil for about, I would estimate at the most 3 to 5 minutes. I wouldn't let them cook any longer than that because they'll be overcooked. Once they're done, and watch this. Look at this. In fact, let me plate up 1 or 2 of them for you. Look at this wonderful deep-fried crabs. You might want to drain them if you'd like, but these would go right onto the table as you would if you were serving boiled crabs or if you were serving steamed or garlic crabs. Look how nice these are, just fantastic. Of course, I'll color them with a little red and a little yellow. And these are done, and they would go right onto the table with a nice bit of cocktail sauce, and they are ready to serve. So isn't that a really simple dish, and a dish that most people wouldn't even think about when you think about hard-shelled crabs? You think about boiling them and putting them in a big pot or whatever, but you never think of deep frying them. What a wonderful change. Now, you know, I mentioned a minute ago that I had a good friend of mine come in to visit, and his name is Captain Sammie Faulk, and he is one of the great hunting and fishing guides of Louisiana. Hey, I told you he was. Hey, boy, hey, I was just saying that you were a hunting guide. Look at this. What do you have here?
I got my limit this morning, so I brought it. Figured I'd share it with you. One speck for you and one for me.
These are beautiful speckled-bellied geese. I tell you, these things are just gorgeous. I like to take them and bake them. I see you left all the feathers on, so I've got all the work, right? These are just absolutely fantastic. So it's been a good season, huh?
Yeah, it was pretty good this morning.
You know, let me ask you a question. The motto of the state of Louisiana is Sportsman's Paradise. We see it on license plates. We see that at every turn. Are we really a sportsman's paradise?
I think so. I think it's still a sportsman's paradise. It may not be quite as good as it used to be, but we've got some fantastic hunting, fishing, just everywhere in Louisiana. I mean, we can do freshwater fishing, inland saltwater fishing, or offshore fishing, all within hours of one another. And we have unbelievable big game hunting. We have upland hunting, and we have the ducks and the geese. It's just, it's tremendous. All very close together.
Yeah, you know, I think about it all the time. You can get in your car and drive about 2 miles. You're at the Gulf of Mexico. Another 2 miles, you're at a freshwater lake. Here's the bayou country with all the wild game. We really do, I guess, have a sportsman's paradise right here.
Yeah, we're really lucky.
You know, you have, I would have to say, a romantic type job. When I think of a guide, you know, I remember sitting watching TV, and there was guides going into the deepest part of Africa, and I thought, yeah, that's pretty interesting job. What's a typical day in the life of Captain Sammie Faulk?
Well, I guess a lot has to do with the seasons. And, you know, maybe in the spring, we might be getting ready to do a little fishing. Sometime we'll do a little saltwater fishing, sometimes some freshwater fishing. And then later on in the beginning of the summer, the birds are nesting, and I have some bird watchers that come down. And so we might be out on some photo expeditions, guiding some people doing that. And then also there's some tour buses that come through, and I step on guide some tour buses through the Creole Nature Trail through our area, showing them all the birds, and there's still a few ducks and geese at that time of the year. And then the alligators. Oh, they like them alligators. And we're able to see alligators inside the refuges, as you mentioned, but there's also a lot of alligators in the wild that we'll see as we drive down the road. And then as the summer progresses into a lot of saltwater fishing, we do inland saltwater fishing, and then also out into the Gulf and fish around the rigs on out into maybe almost 100 miles offshore. And then later on in the fall, it's time to get ready for the duck and goose hunting and a little bit of deer hunting and that type of stuff.
Do you actually have like camps yourself, or do you have boats that you take people out on, or do people just contact and you actually take them out into the wilderness?
I've got boats. I don't have a camp. I usually set the people up. They stay at a hotel, or we go around. I've got boats available, and then I take them, and I've got leases where we hunt in the marshes and fish in the marshes and this type of stuff.
How has hunting changed in Louisiana? You know, you talk to some of the old hunters. You know, we sit around my restaurant in South Louisiana, and we talk to some of the old guys who's been hunting all of their life, and they say, well, hunting's just not what it used to be. Fishing's not. How has it changed over the years?
Well, I guess it has changed to some extent. It's not quite as easy as it used to be. You know, we in Louisiana, we've always had a lot. I mean, our ancestors, grandparents, great-grandparents, they lived off the land. I mean, that was their pantry as such. They would go out and get what they wanted to have for the next day or so. And it was quite easy. We were spoilt as such. And it's gotten a little bit tougher, and a lot of these people reminisce over the old days, but still, hunting and fishing is still excellent. We still have such a wide variety that we still can go out and hunt and catch when we're fishing. It's still excellent.
You know, I mentioned the refuges. We have 4 in Cameron Parish. Right. We have 4 wildlife refuges. And it must be just amazing what's happened over there, because there are literally millions upon millions of birds and ducks. And I talk about alligators. There's alligators all over the highway. There was a sign that said, I couldn't believe it. It said, caution, alligator crossing. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. You know, one of the things that I did miss, though, when I was down there is I did go to a hunting camp, and the guys were cooking venison and cooking ducks, and everybody's good cooks in those camps, as you well know. But one thing that was missing was a dessert. Yeah. And you and I talked about it. I said, I'm going to create a dessert for these hunters, because these guys, you know, they get away from home. They know how to do all of this pot cooking, but they don't know how to do a dessert. I want to give you a dessert, and I want to share it with my friends out here so that you can take it back to the hunting camps of Louisiana. And this is called a Holly Beach camp cake. That's what we're going to call it, a Holly Beach dump cake, because we're going to dump everything right into things. Hey, you take the spoon. You know, you were one of the guys who couldn't make a dessert.
You're right.
So what I'm going to do, I said it's a dump cake. So into this pan, I'm going to put, you go ahead and spread all of that around nicely. This is any kind of pie filling, any kind of fruit filling on a pie will work just fine as you start to spread it around the bottom there. Just even it out good. Now look, very important, you have to even, you know, these guys want things that look good in these camps, right? Yeah. I tell you, you're doing a good job. Now, I'm going to put right on top of that a little bit cake mix. Any kind of cake mix you would want right on top of this filling. You just kind of dust it and just kind of spread that right on top. It's pretty easy so far, right?
Yeah.
You could do this, huh?
I think I can accomplish this.
You teach me how to get some of those wonderful speckle belly geese, and I'll show you how to make a few of these good desserts. You'll be well respected out there in Cameron. Okay, on top of that, I'm going to put a little bit pineapple. And of course, this is just crushed pineapple, and I'll spread it around like that, and you can continue to move it in, all dumped right out of the can. Now you know where the name comes from, right? Okay, you know, you mentioned all of these hunters coming in and you fixing them up with hotel rooms. Does wildlife and I guess this sportsman's paradise, what kind of effect does it have on our economy here in Louisiana?
Oh, it's tremendous. It brings in millions of dollars every year. I mean, people, I don't think, realize that how many people that come down here looking for the wildlife, not only the hunters and the fishermen. I mean, we do have the bird watchers and the photographers and just the people, the sun worshipers who want to go down to the beach or just ride around in their boats and just enjoy the great outdoors, the great weather that we have here.
Well, you know, one of the things that I notice is that the price of fishing licenses, the gas that people have to buy, must have a tremendous impact on these little bitty fishing villages, the hotel taxes, and so it's got to be really great for the economy of these small towns.
Yeah, no, they really put a lot of money in the economy.
Whenever there's a conservation measure, you know, I talked about the redfish a minute ago. Whenever there's a conservation measure, of course, at the same time, there's a big groundswell of controversy. People get really concerned. No, we don't need a conservation. Yes, we do. You know, is there more of an awareness today, or do the conservation measures really work? What, in your opinion?
Well, I think they do. Just like the redfish, like you mentioned, and several years back, they were in a turmoil about them. They were in a bad depression, and They put a band on them, and there's no commercial harvest at the moment. There's some recreational harvest, and the fish really seem to be bouncing back. They really do. Just like the alligators. There again, one point in time, they was on the endangered species, and now they are just about taking over.
Taking over the highways. Yep,
Yeah.
you got to watch out. Alligator
Right.
crossing.
That's it.
Okay, into that a little pecans, and then of course one of my favorite things, coconut.
Coconut.
I'm gonna put coconut on top of that. Now, hey, seriously, you could do this, huh?
I believe.
Okay, and then we have to put a little butter on top of it, and of course I'll have to use your spoon. Why don't you just spoon?
Okay.
I'll do it. I'll do it for you. I noticed how quickly you gave up that thing. You wouldn't give up that gun and fishing rod that quickly, would you? Okay, and this would bake in the oven for just, I guess maybe a half hour or so, and all of the juices from the fruit and would obviously work in with the pie dough to create a really nice. Now I know this might not look like very much to you now, but take a look at this. I want to show you this.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, take a look at that right there. Can you see that? And all of that nice powdered sugar on top of it. This is your new creation, Sammy. This is Holly Beach camp cake or dump cake. Now, you know, we've sitting here making this courtbouillion. I definitely want to finish this up. I want to put, why don't you stir this for me for just a second, and I'm going to add a couple pieces of this really nice fish to it here, a couple pieces of the fish that's already poached. I'll put it right down into the thing, and that'll be ready to go right onto a plate of rice, or you can put it on top of noodles, or actually add a little more stock to it and serve it just like you would a soup. So it's a really magnificent dish. One more question.
Okay.
Do you guarantee a hunter or a fisherman with a catch? I want to make sure if I ever come down there, I'm guaranteed a catch.
I have very little control over Mother Nature, but we try. We try to get them in the right spot and take them to a nice-looking blind or whatever. And most of the time, we're pretty successful, but there are days.
And if any of my friends out here wanted to get in touch with Captain Sammie Faulk for a day, where would they find you?
Would be no problem, Sammie Faulk in the phone book in Sweet Lake, Louisiana.
Hey, and we'll look you up. Thank you so much for coming by. I appreciate it. And thank you all for stopping by. And come back as we continue to cook up more of these great Taste of Louisiana. Thank you so much.
Funding for this program was provided in part by Bruce Foods Corporation, makers of Bruce's Yams and other distinctive Louisiana-style food products.
Chef John Folse has written a cookbook that allows you to explore the exciting world of Louisiana cuisine. The Evolution of Cajun and Creole Cuisine is a full-color, 352-page book containing food history and recipes for gumbo, jambalaya, makshu, and other Cajun dishes. For your copy, send a check or money order for $24.95 to Louisiana Public Broadcasting at the address on your screen. To use your credit card, call toll-free 1-800-973-7246 or visit our website at lpb.org.